So by delivering these free electrons via this wonderful device, we are actually calming those four elements immediately that are known as inflammation.
Okay. I have one other question right now. Do you need to place, maybe you'll answer this later, so if that's okay if it's going to come later on, but does it matter where you place the device? Can that, you know what I mean? Does it have to be in a specific area, or can it be anywhere and still get the benefit?
Well, generically speaking, you could put it anywhere and get a result. Sometimes we want results faster.
Okay.
So the faster result would be on the point of pain.
Okay.
We have more advanced devices that will actually tell you, here's the real reason behind it. And I know that you will follow me on this. You have an area, a walled off area where you have inflammation, almost like a bubbling volcano that's going on. And like every furnace, every system that actually keeps on going, it needs energy to sustain itself. And when it uses energy to sustain itself, it also has residual substances that will come from that. Like, for example, if I put a log in a fireplace, I'm going to get heat, but I'm going to get ashes.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to clean the ashes out. In inflammation, you get heat, but you also get residual substances that leak from this pocket of inflammation. The residual substances leak down into the lymph and into the bloodstream and end up in tissue somewhere downstream, and we give the name of a disease to what has just happened.
All right. Okay.
So at times what we need to do, so if I put the fire out, I have collateral damage that has happened. You can die from this residual damage.
Right.
Collateral damage, we'll call it. Because it has caused enough damage downstream to create the name for disease. So if I put out the fire, now I've still got to deal with this damage.
And that's so interesting, because that's why inflammation is the root cause of diabetes, of cancer, cardiovascular disease, autoimmune disease, even dementia. That's really what you're saying, is the downstream residual, the remnants,
right,
so to speak, from the inflammatory process. But I'd say inflammation, that's the root cause, and then you have to clean up the mess, so to speak.
So so there are two parts to the treatment. One is going to be putting out the fire of inflammation, and we have frequencies for that, and I'll show you that also in a minute. And then we have these other frequencies, like the 15, the 30 hertz, the 783, which are basically cleaning up the mess.
Gotcha. Okay, that's great. That's great distinction.
So it's almost like a Smokey the Bear episode where I say, you got to put out the fire.
Yeah.
Put out your campfire. Put on a second bucket of water if you have to. But do not leave your campsite till that fire is out.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
That makes a lot of
Silly
sense. That's great.
So the next one that we want to look at then, let's get back to your device. Now we have 60 hertz. It's the next one that I want to look at. Now 60 hertz is a very interesting frequency. Now you have to remember, you get 60 hertz out of your wall socket when you plug something in. But it's different from the 60 hertz in my device. And why is it? What is that difference? It's the amount of time that it is on and the amount of time that it is off. Coming out of my wall, it's constantly on. Coming out of my device, it's on for fractions of milliseconds. Just long enough to stimulate the cells into opening up and creating the enzymes that I need. It's almost like broadcasting an event. I'm telling the cells, listen up, I got something wonderful coming. So several Nobel Prizes have been won on the discovery that 60 hertz actually creates an event of calcium ions entering the cell to activate a variety of enzyme molecules. Now, these enzymes in turn are the catalysts which greatly accelerate the biochemical processes within the body. So that 60 hertz signal then increases the calcium influx that turns on these enzymes.
It's a way that cells talk to each other, right?
Yeah, so now your cells talk to each other all day long. They're like a hen house. They're just clucking away all day long. And they need to maintain and sustain that communication. And they talk to each other, but they also send information up to God, the brain. It says, here's the information that I've gathered. What do you want me to do with it? What would you like this still cell to do today? Would you like me to secrete more or excrete more? Would you like me to wiggle and jiggle more? Would you like me to make a copy of myself even?
Right.
So all of these things. I just had my cat decide he's going to come up and sit on my lap. No. So all of these things are essential to staying alive. And they are producing what we call it ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which are produced in the mitochondria by the delivery of oxygen and food. So that's why we breathe, and that's why we eat, is to produce this energy. Now, the 60 hertz program that we have in here, I've complicated it a little bit. And what we've done is we've set in what we call dosing and zeroing. Now, wouldn't it be great to have a device that actually tells you when your brain has been contacted? Because we want to include the brain in the healing process. And wouldn't it be even greater if we were able to monitor and let the brain tell us when it is ready for treatment? Because there are times when your brain doesn't want to be healed. This is why people respond differently to drugs and so on and so forth. They also will respond differently to different medications or foods or whatever we give them. They just don't respond because they believe that the disease that they have is essential to them going on. So it's imperative that we are able to bypass this system and let the brain tell me when the body is ready to receive this information. So that's what we call zeroing. Now, when the brain responds back to your device, what we have is we have it set up so that all of the LED lights will light up. And when the brain says, okay, you can treat me, that's when the blue light will add itself to the fireworks. This is when the body has completed that dynamic change at the site that you are working on. Now, to be able to access this program, put it on the point of pain and leave it there. Don't move it around, but leave it there till all the lights come on and leave it there further for the blue light to come on. This is a full activation of these calcium ions.
Yeah. So that's
and the body saying, okay, I'm ready for your treatment. Do your magic.
So this is a really important point that people need to hear. It's like you put the device on an area and you don't even begin to do any treatment until all the lights come on and you'll hear it. And then finally the blue light will come on. And that's when the brain is going, I'm good to go.
I'm good to go. Let's have a party. Okay, so if you say, what's the first element in my party? What am I going to be doing now?
And sometimes it needs, how long? I mean, sometimes it needs to stay there a little while, right?
It may take, sometimes it can take up to 5 minutes or longer.
Right. So people should be
But it is
patient.
worthwhile because you can imagine that your brain is actually going, oh my God, I need to adapt to this. Now, these frequencies are changing constantly. They're being dampened so that your brain is no longer, your brain will always pay attention to what is novel. Novelty is the secret to everything that happens in your body.
Yes.
Then your brain takes a break and becomes a sphinx and waits for something new to happen. So that life goes on pretty well like a river, and where you're watching the water flow, and the little eddies are these moments that happen where the brain lights up and says, whoops, there's another eddy. I didn't recognize that. Well, let's go see what it is. It might be vital to my survival to figure this out. So what we're doing is we're creating a bunch of eddies in the water. And your brain is saying, whoops, I better check this out. This is total genius in how we're getting the brain to participate in the healing moment.
Yeah, wow. So I think just the important thing is that people need to be patient. Sometimes it'll light up within, 20, 30 seconds, and sometimes, like you said, it may take 5 minutes, but you don't want to proceed until all those lights go flashing all the way through all those frequencies, and then that blue one is the final connection.
That final connection is where your body now, because now you got your brain's attention, now is the time that you want to go.
Okay, it's ready to go, ready for treatment.
Ready to go. We're good to go. Okay.
Okay.
So here's one of the things, if you look back at your device again, let's look at the device space, and we have 77 hertz. Now, one of the good to go programs, if you look at 77, we know that scar tissue acts as a barrier to intercellular communication. Your cells need to talk to each other, and they need that constant communication, but scar tissue acts as a wall in that communication process. And we know a lot about scar tissue, but medically, the medical establishment has only started looking at scar tissue as the probable cause for organ transplant reject, or for a slowdown in the healing process. When there's a break in the communication pathways, there's definitely going to be a problem within the body when one group gets the information and one group does not. We see that in Scotland. This little breakup between Scotland and England, And they say, you're not paying attention to us. We want to leave. But of course you can't leave. And in your body, these rogue cells start building themselves up, and you don't want rogue cells. So you need to break down the scar tissue. And we do it at 77 hertz. Scar tissue itself is also collagen. And you have collagen that acts as a conductor, and you have collagen that acts as a capacitor. The capacitor is something that builds electricity instead of conducting it. Mm-hmm. And it can build it all the way to 1.5 volts. And 1.5 volts is a good way to blow that very fragile sodium-potassium pump that creates energy that makes you wiggle and jiggle and so on and so forth, right? Is you need that energy. And a high level of buildup in your capacitors can blow that energy out. You don't want that. So 77 hertz is a good way to treat those scars. And I think what we want to do today is we really want to give you an idea of what these different frequencies are good for or used for, so that you can get a jump start right out of getting the device right out of the box and being able to use